Chapter 35, Separate but Equal. Back near the end of the 19th century, Homer Plessy was arrested for sitting in a whites-only railroad car. Was it legal for railroads to separate the races? What did the Constitution say? The 14th Amendment says, "No state shall abridge the privileges of citizens of the United States, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." Abridge the privileges, that means to take away or limit the rights of citizens. Equal protection of the laws. That seems pretty clear. Does keeping people separate on a train abridge privileges? Does it deny anyone equal protection of the laws? Some Americans weren't sure about that, and they looked to the Supreme Court for guidance. Finally, in 1896, the Supreme Court gave them the answer when it decided Homer Plessy's case. It was an answer that would cause a lot of people a lot of grief. Justice Henry Billings Brown wrote the decision for the majority of the justice, and he said that the 14th Amendment called for the absolute equality of the two races before the law, but it could not have been intended to abolish distinctions based upon color or to enforce social equality or a commingling of two races. Do you understand that? The races were equal before the law, is what they said, but the laws could prevent them from mingling. Justice John Marshall Harlan disagreed with that majority decision. Supreme Court justices often disagree with each other. The majority rules, but those who don't agree can write their own dissenting opinions. In the famous 1896 dissenting opinion, Justice Harlan wrote, "In the view of the Constitution, in the eye of the law, there is no superior, dominant ruling class of citizens. Our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens." But the majority opinion was the one that counted. The Supreme Court said that if facilities were equal, they could be separate. The Plessy versus Ferguson decision made segregation legal in schools, restaurants, hotels, and public places in the southern states. Jim Crow had won the approval of the highest court. Separate but equal was the law. We will read these captions in a different video. Decades after the Plessy decision, a number of court cases challenged the idea of separate but equal. Here are some of the stories behind those cases. Linda Carroll Brown, who was 7 years old and lived in Topeka, Kansas, had to walk across the railroad tracks and take an old bus to get to school, though there was a better school within 5 blocks of her house. Linda couldn't go to that school because she was black and the schools in Topeka were segregated. Linda's father, the Reverend Oliver Brown, didn't think that was right, and he went to court to try to do something about it. Their case became known as the very famous Brown versus Board of Education. South Carolina's Clarendon County spent $43 each year on its black students, whereas it spent $179 each year on its white students. The white children all had school desks. In 2 of the black schools, there were no desks at all. Harry and Lisa Briggs and 20 other black parents sued the Clarendon County School Board. They wanted equal funding for black schools. They sued in the name of 10-year-old Harry Briggs Jr. and 66 other children. Right away, Lisa Briggs was fired from her job. So were most of the other adults who signed the lawsuit that was titled Briggs versus Clarendon County. Wow. Barbara Rose Johns, a junior at Maughton High School in Farmville, Virginia, was angry about the conditions in her school. It had been built for 200 students, but it held 450. There was no cafeteria, no gym. The highest paid teachers at Maughton received less than the lowest paid teachers at Farmville's white school. A committee of black parents had petitioned the county for a new school and had been turned down. Johns decided to act. She had a friend telephone the school principal and tell him he was needed at the bus terminal at once. Then she called a meeting of all the students. She told the teachers they were planning a surprise event. She was right. They were surprised. Barbara Jones talked the school students at Maughton to go on strike for a better school. They walked out of their classes. A member at the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, came to Farmville. He intended to tell the students that Farmville was no place to fight segregation, but he was so impressed with their determination that he helped those 117 Maughton High School students sue the state of Virginia. They demanded that the state abolish segregated schools. Their case was called Davis versus County School Board of Prince Edward County, because the first of the students listed was 14-year-old Dorothy E. Davis. Each of those three cases was defeated in court, but that didn't stop the plaintiffs who were suing. They appealed the cases. What does appeal mean? Well, appeal means that our legal system begins with city and county courts, and it goes on to the state courts and then the federal courts and then finally to the Supreme Court. So suppose you go to court and you don't think your trial was fair. You can appeal your case to a higher court. That higher court may reverse the lower court's decision. If it doesn't, you may in some cases appeal the case still further and further until you finally get to the Supreme Court. They appealed them all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. There, they grouped with two other cases dealing with school segregation, one from Delaware and one from Washington, D.C. Together, there were 5 suits who were called by the name of the first of them, Brown versus Board of Education. The case would directly affect all the schools in the 21 states with segregated schools. It would indirectly affect almost every school in the United States. Brown versus Board of Education was to become one of the most important cases ever brought before the Supreme Court. Supreme Court cases are not handled like the cases you see on television. The people involved, the school children in this case, don't come before the court. There are no witnesses. Lawyers do all the talking, and they often spend months or years preparing their cases. Then they present their arguments to the 9 justices. The Supreme Court justices usually ask questions. Sometimes the questions can be answered at once. Sometimes the lawyers have to come back and re-argue the case. Anyone can attend Supreme Court session if he or she is willing to stand in line. The court is in Washington, D.C., right near the United States Capitol, which is where Congress meets. Well, on December 9th, 1952, all the seats were filled in the Supreme Court chamber, and 400 people were turned away. That is unusual, but it was an unusual day. The court was ready to consider Brown versus Board of Education. The NAACP was representing the children. Charlie Houston was dead, but his star pupil, Thurgood Marshall, the great-grandson of a slave, argued their case. Marshall, a hard worker, was a meticulous lawyer with a good sense of humor. He had argued 15 cases before the Supreme Court, and he won 13. The lawyer Marshall faced was John W. Davis. Some people said that Davis was the best lawyer in America. He had argued more cases before the Supreme Court than any living attorney. Davis had run for president against Calvin Coolidge, and everyone seemed to like him, even though he lost the election. Even Thurgood Marshall liked Davis. They often ate lunch together. Supreme Court justices do not decide questions of right or wrong. They can sometimes be a matter of opinion. We live in a society based on law, the Constitution being our highest law. The job of the justices is to decide the meaning of the Constitution, not what's right or wrong. Does the Constitution permit segregation, or does segregation break the rules laid out in the Constitution? That was the question the justices had to decide. Marshall and the NAACP lawyers presented 2 arguments. First, they argued that very important 14th Amendment, which says no state shall abridge the privileges of citizens of the United States, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws, made the doctrine of separate but equal unconstitutional. Then they argued that segregated schools can never truly be equal. Separating people of it itself makes them feel unequal and inferior. The Plessy decision was wrong, they said. John Davis looked at the 14th Amendment and the rest of the Constitution. He said that nothing in it prevented separation. As long as equal facilities were provided, each state, said Davis, has the right to make its own decisions on social matters such as segregation. He believed the Plessy decision was right. This was a very difficult case. The justices asked questions, then they took their time. A year passed. It looked as if the court might split, with some of the justices saying segregated schools were unconstitutional and some saying they were not. This issue was dividing the country. If the courts were split, it would make those divisions worse. Then something unexpected happened. The Supreme Court's Chief Justice died. President Dwight Eisenhower named California's former governor Earl Warren as the new Chief Justice. Warren was a mild-mannered man who was not expected to be a dynamic Chief Justice, but a few people who knew him well understood he had a gift for leadership. They also understood him to have a strong moral sense, and he believed in justice and fairness. Finally, the waiting was over, and on May 17, 1954, Earl Warren read the decision in Brown versus Board of Education. Here is part of what he read. It is doubtful that any child may reasonably be expected to succeed in life if he is denied the opportunity of an education. Such an opportunity is the right which must be available to all on equal terms. Does segregation of schools, of children in public schools, solely on the basis of race deprive children of the minority group of equal educational opportunities? We believe that it does. We conclude unanimously that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. Unanimously, the new Chief Justice had convinced all of the justices that, because of the importance of his decision, it should be unanimous, which means they should all agree. It was, as the Washington Post said the next day in the editorial, a new birth of freedom. Plessy versus Ferguson, a case about a railroad car, had made segregation in fact in almost all phases of life of the South. Brown versus Board of Education, a case about school children, would provide a way to attack segregation, not just in the classroom. But the battle wasn't over. Laws have to be enforced, and some people were determined not to enforce this one. Virginia's Prince Edward County closed all of its public schools for 5 years rather than to integrate the schools. White children were educated in private white academies funded with tax money paid by white and black taxpayers. Black children were denied any schooling at all. Prince Edward County wasn't alone in its mean-spiritedness. Most Southern communities refused to integrate schools. In Norfolk, Virginia, all public schools were closed for a year. Most children, black and white, didn't have any schools to go to. All right, I'm going to record all the captions in a second video. Be sure to listen to all of this important information. Have a great day.